What is the first thing that you think about when you hear the word Palestine? Do you think about religion, adversity, politics? You might be thinking about Pakistan. Or maybe nothing at all. The first thing that pops into my mind is hope. Being a Palestinian living in the West Bank means that I am living through and experiencing one of the most controversial conflicts in modern history. And living in such cases would yield what I would refer to as toxic stress, which is a term that describes the general human responses when faced with threats, challenges, and their consequences. Now, here, you would have one of two choices. You can either let this toxic stress destroy your soul and crush your hopes, or you can transform it into a form of energy that it drives you to be creative and catalyze positive change. It is said that agony is justified as soon as it becomes the raw material of beauty. When I first read this quote, I instantly thought about those respectable artists and inventors whom we hear about having lives filled with torment and affliction, which happen to drive and generate the unparalleled creativity we know them for. People like J.K. Rowling or Nikola Tesla. And it also reminded me of an ancient Greek concept known as the tortured artist, which, in a nutshell, proposes that toxic stress inspires creativity and accomplishment. When I interpreted this quote from the perspective of an ambitious Palestinian youth, I found it to be heavily related to the Palestinian life as well. Now, for the past 8 years, I have been very active when it comes to after-school activities, participating in the biggest innovation forum in Palestine, taking a part and winning a national entrepreneurship program, and my latest achievement being organizing the first ever TEDx event at my college last April. During my involvement in these, alongside many other initiatives, I was exposed to a very diverse segment of other inspiring Palestinians. And one thing that I kept on noticing after getting to know them and their stories is the overwhelming and apparent sense of creativity that was clearly and vividly inspired by toxic stress, either directly or indirectly. An important fact about Palestine: this very complex state that Palestinians have been living in for the past 50 years has left a huge scar on their mental well-being. Depression there is extremely prevalent and is considered an epidemic, about 30%, which is a rate that is unmatched elsewhere in the world. Just to put that percentage into perspective, it is 10 times higher than that of the UK. Here in the US, it's almost 6.9%. Imagine what life would be like if 30% of the American population dealt with this mental disorder. Now, most people would react to these facts with a dominant sense of pessimism, unless you're like Muhammad Herzallah, a neuroscientist, a researcher, and a graduate of the same medical school I am attending. Muhammad has transformed these ominous facts into a golden chance, or what is known as a Christianity, an opportunity in the midst of a crisis. Although a tragic one, this has made his homeland, Palestine, an ideal place to perform groundbreaking research on the effects of clinical depression on the human brain. What Muhammad did was set up the first ever infrastructure for neuroscience research in Palestine, the Palestinian Neuroscience Initiative, which has now established multiple partnerships with Ivy League universities and renowned research centers, in addition to its expansion and its involving multiple other inspiring young medical students. Muhammad is now listed as one of the 500 most influential Arabs a neuroscience expert, and a TED fellow. The reason I chose Muhammad as an example from Palestine is because of his resourceful and goal-oriented motive. He says, and I quote, "Let's turn this problem into an advantage and train the next generation to deal with it." The thing about creativity is that it is a very sensitive and malleable tool. When we are in a state of sadness, it can be utilized as a form of therapy to provide light in the darkness that dominates. And when you think about it, it actually makes sense. I mean, this is why we use art therapy, music therapy, and even drama therapy when dealing with mental disorders such as anxiety and depression. There are multiple ways we can transform our own negative emotions into astounding forms of hope. Take this other smiley and happy Muhammad, for example. By the way, if you're ever in Palestine and you do not know someone's name, just call him Muhammad. And this will do the trick. So Muhammad is also known as the young Picasso of Palestine. He is a 16-year-old kid with an exceptional sense of creativity. He lives in Gaza, which is known to be the most densely populated area in the whole world, extremely poor, barely has electricity, and has suffered from 3 major wars in the past few years. Although toxic stress is being faced on all fronts when it comes to Muhammad, he still sees this toxic stress and these hardships as a blessing, as they enable him to channel his own negative emotions into this mesmerizing artwork. The young Picasso occasionally improvises using coffee, sand, and glue instead of paint due to the very harsh lifestyle he's forced to experience. Coffee, sand, and glue. If I were given the best and most professional painting tools in the whole world, this would be the result. It is also worth mentioning that inspiration was not the only factor here, as it was met by dedication, hard work, and consistency. Pablo Picasso once said, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." Unfortunately, Palestinians are viewed as helpless and needy at the international level, which is totally expected, to be honest, although not accurate. And that is due to the very shallow depiction and false image that are being portrayed to everyone else in the world. Yes, it's true that we're facing toxic stress, but it is also very important that we address the presence of the filled half of the cup, because it exists. It's time that we shift our focus to what can be accomplished and what can be done, rather than dwell on the unsolvable. Implementing this concept won't only improve the world's perception of Palestine, but also the Palestinians' perception of themselves. What I, the first Muhammad, the second Muhammad, and many other Muhammads and Palestinians are doing perfectly exemplifies my belief in what would serve to remarkably better the situation in Palestine. The beauty of this concept is that it is universal, it's versatile. Anyone can adopt this mentality and apply it in their lives at various scales whenever faced with any form of toxic stress. If a small, striving, and poor country could have one of the highest literacy rates in the world, produce the next Picasso, have the youngest journalist in the world, or the best teacher in the world, imagine what you, with less toxic stress and more resources, have the potential to do. Thank you.